Sorry, I'll start it again. Just muted you blokes and sniffed. I'm a dickhead. All right.
I'm not going to argue.
No. Fuck of it. How well am I going these days? State of Origin time tomorrow night. Tonight, by the time you blokes listen to this, and ladies listen to this, it will be State of Origin 1 from Accor Stadium in Sydney. Barney, Dag, and Ollie with you to look through the key matchups and what we think might happen to kick off State of Origin Game 1.
Yes.
Guess what is it called? A series. That's what they play, a series. All righty. For the New South Wales Blues, James Tedesco, fullback and captain, Brian Tu'o, Katoni Staggs, Jack Whiten, Daniel Tupou, Jerome Luai, Nathan Cleary, Payne Haas, Cook, Paulo, Murray, Sims, Yo, the interchange at 14, Crichton, then at Liam Martin, at Regal Campbell Gillard, Ryan Madison make up the 17. For Queensland, Ponga, Cobbo, Holmes, Gagai, Coates, Munster, Thierry Evans, halfback and captain, Tino Fosua, Maua Ali, Ben Hunt, Josh Papaihi, Kurt Capewell, Felice Kafusi, Ruben Cotter locks the scrum, Harry Grant on the bench with Lindsay Collins, Pat Carrigan, and Jeremiah Nanai. It started raining outside, actually, which was weird when I went to put the kids to bed, but weather looks good, cold, and I guess a bit of a typical sort of dewy Wednesday evening track. Barn, initial thoughts on how these teams line up?
Yeah, it's always a pretty grizzy affair out at Homebush there. So you're probably not going to see blokes screaming down the wings and running away from everybody. But I like both teams. There's not a lot of selections that I'm not too sure on, but there's two out of this New South Wales team that I'm a little bit concerned about, to be honest. Tarek Sims probably doesn't, in my opinion, deserve a spot in the squad. I think Frizzell would be better on the bench, and I think Liam Martin would be a better option to start in this team. I understand what Tarek Sims did last year on the back of not great form. He came in and had a terrific impact on the Origin, but I'm not sure he can do it. He can back it up and do it again 2 years in a row. He's basically turned himself into a battering ram front row forward, and picking him on an edge worries me. And Whiten is the other one in the New South Wales squad. If you really do have to pick him, which I wouldn't have, you would be picking him in the 14, in my opinion, and you'd be having Crichton starting. The fact that they're going to play him in centre, his last couple of performances in the centre position have left a lot to be desired, honestly, especially in defence. He got stood up a few times by... I think he was on Gagai's side, and he made him look like an very average defender at times. So, to me, they're the couple of question marks I have with the New South Wales team.
I might butt in and you're going to keep going. Just get everyone's thoughts on New South Wales before we get to the other one. Then, do you have anything else to add? Or are you about to move on?
No, I was going to Queensland.
Yeah. Ollie, any thoughts?
Well, my concerns are pretty similar to Barney, but I guess I'll add to that. The concerns that a lot of people have had around Damien Cook. We all had Apisai Coruscant starting at hooker. I think a lot of that is out of form. But when I think about it, I'm fine with Cook being selected for now, because usually, even when he has been a little bit out of form, he turns up when it comes to Origin. And he's one of the key components of that Brad Fittler era. He came in as Freddie came in as well, essentially. So I'm fine with him getting this crack, but I feel like, let's just say Queensland wins this game and Cook doesn't have the best performance, you would have to think he's probably one of those changes Freddie makes for game 2. But for now, I don't know about you boys, because again, we all had Coruscant in our side. what are we sort of thinking about Cook being in the team? Because for now, I'm still fine with it.
I'm not upset about it. I just would have picked Appy on form and combinations. I think Appy is great at Cook. Either runs or he doesn't. Is basically what we get from Cook, and he doesn't just have a forward pack made for fast play the balls, which is bread and butter. He's got his mate Cam Murray there, but the rest of these, I suppose Liam Martin does a little bit and Campbell Gillard, but it doesn't feel like a team made for that, which isn't necessarily. Which I think is a forward pack that would suit Appy better, and then having the natural combination with Yo and Cleary as the first and second, third, and Luai outside him is sort of fit better to me. And but maybe I'm overthinking. That said, I don't think Cook's going to let anyone down. He's not going to miss tackles. He's not going to. What you see is what you get from Cook. If you get a bit of space, he's going to run and he's going to be dangerous. But I just would have picked Appy on form. I would have, and I echo Barney's sentiments with Whiten, but I'll let you finish off first.
I absolutely agree with the Appy. I would have picked him just for his service out of dummy half. But the only reason that I'm not so upset about Cook being picked is the fact that I think New South Wales, I'll get to it more as we go through, but I think New South Wales are a more adaptable team and they can play off the back of slow play the balls more than Queensland will be able to. And I think Queensland will need the speed of the ruck more than New South Wales will.
And I think the plan will be to do just that. And I think the reflection of that is not having Addo-Carr, because he's the one that is half looking for the broken play.
I think they want to speed it up early, and I think they'll slow it down after about 20 to 30 minutes. But
yeah,
we'll get to that.
Well, heading into 2021's series, one of the concerns I think we had was that New South Wales edges, Brian Toto and Josh Addo-Carr at the time, not the biggest wingers, and you sort of want traditionally in Origin one of the bigger, lankier wingers that could sort of get up, jump for the high ball. And it worked out obviously for New South Wales last year because Tom Trbojevic was there and able to drop back as well. But again, this is more sort of a question I want to put to you guys, because the past couple of years when Origin's come around, we've all sort of unanimously agreed and touched on Daniel Tupou, a guy who's never really been out of Origin form, but just sort of not been picked. And I think in our lineup prediction show, we sort of acknowledged that he probably should be there, but we didn't necessarily think he would be picked. He has been picked now. One of my questions, I guess, to you guys is, if Tom Trbojevic was fit and playing in the centres, would he be there? That's just something I'm sort of thinking about. Could Addo-Carr potentially still be there, and they still go with Tom Trbojevic being able to sort of drop back for Toto or Addo-Carr and play as that sort of that big body out on the edges? So is this Daniel Tupou selection, I guess, more influenced not by the form of Josh Addo-Carr, but the absence of Tom Trbojevic?
Yes. Or Latrell Mitchell.
Yes. Or Latrell, or both, yes. Because both are, 6'3". I think Tommy's taller.
Yeah, Tommy's a fraction taller, yeah. But they're both 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and they as you mentioned, they do have the ability to drop in and behind, or even just stand next to a shorter winger, and when the ball comes down, they're in and around the ball. So yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, mate.
But it does become quite stark when you actually look at these teams on paper. Just the aero dominance that Queensland could have with Cobbo,
absolutely.
Coates, and then you throw Nana in as well, who we know what he's been doing all year.
So before we move on to the wingers and those different positions, do we have any questions around the Queensland?
Just to finish on Whiten, the fact that he'll be marking Val Holmes. Val Holmes in the last few weeks has made some good centers look very average. He's in very good form and he's fast. And if Whiten gets isolated, he could.
I think they'll put him up against Gagai. I think he'll be on the left.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you'll have. Excuse me. Who have we got on the center on the right hand side? I think you'll have Staggs up against.
Which probably suits because Stagg. We'll wait the combinations, but I still struggle to believe, and I still think Crichton might start, despite what everyone keeps saying.
That's my thought as well. But
think that they'll be just pulling a little trick late at the end. As for Queensland, I guess they've picked who they're going to pick. I would have had another. I think they're missing maybe a prop. I think the New South Wales forward pack's bigger. Obviously, we all know the prop we would have picked.
Mhm.
And yes, Ruben Cotter's playing well. He's not massive. Yes, he makes 60 tackles a week. But the more I've thought about this, if you're looking for blokes to make 50 tackles and not miss any, wouldn't that be like New South Wales picking Alex Twile? It's like, I know he offers a bit more intact, but he's going to get bashed in this game, I feel like. And having to make every bit of those 60 tackles. And I don't think Lindsay Collins has been in any sort of form. So I think the front row is a concern. And I have and even to a lesser extent, Capel as well. Look, we can all rant about Harry being the best hooker in the game, which he is. But if anyone's ever going to win man of the match off the bench, Harry Grant could play 65 minutes and win him this game. So we'll see how that pans out. And we'll see how when they get, maybe he's not well, maybe he's coming, but he has been coming out from injury, he's been crook. So we'll see how all that pans out. And, they might start Harry in the same way. We can all say it, they might just turn around and start him. So who knows?
I think they'll want
about you
Hunt on
guys?
the field for the majority of the 80 minutes, to be honest. So I think they will start Hunt. But what they do with him once Harry comes on the field is a question mark. On form, Queensland have probably got a better bunch of players to pick from. I don't think there's too many of those players that are out of form at the moment. My question's in experience around Cobbo and Cotter. You got a young guy who's, he looks like he could be a world beater, but you put him under pressure. It's a big question. He's only, 20, 25 games into his career. As you mentioned, Cotter, I think ball in hand, he may end up getting driven back constantly every time he tries to run the ball. But hopefully, for Queensland, he makes a hell of a lot of tackles. And another bloke in Coates, his form is questionable at the moment. He does come down with a good jump and scores tries for Melbourne when he's jumping over the top of people, but I haven't seen him do much else.
I would have picked Tuolangi.
If he's going to be picking up the ball out of his back end and trying to run into the teeth of the forwards for New South Wales, I can see him getting dominated ball in hand, and unless they're down in the 20-metre line and attacking New South Wales trial line. So,
make a very good point. I think Queensland have picked a form side, a more informed side from 1 to 17 than New South Wales. Ollie?
Well, and we've spoken about this before. This has been set up perfectly for the classic Queensland ambush. Not like a dominant Queensland side who everyone's just tipping to win like the 8 in a row. A classic Queensland ambush. They've got the form players. They've actually overall got more Origin experience in their side than New South Wales as well. Of course, that would be coming from select players, but those select players, Munster, Cherry, etc.,
Origin football.
They played a shitload of Origin football, and those young guys who are in form at their club sides coming into play Origin are only going to benefit from playing around those guys, especially the young Cowboys boys coming through as well. But the only real changes I'd make to Queensland are pretty much the same that we'd make. It's only those couple of changes. Obviously, Mo comes in for Lindsay Collins. You probably start Mo over Ruben Cotter, shift Mo obviously to prop and Tino to lock. I think that would probably make the most sense. But then again, other than that, you wouldn't really change the Queensland side, especially with Harry. I take it if Harry was fully fit, didn't have the groin concern, and was not ill, I take it he probably would be starting. And again, both he and Hunt are probably going to play most of this game.
Well, I think you can take the number off Cotter's back and put it on Tino, because Tino's going to be playing 13. He's been pushed up into the front row for the first 20 minutes. When it's down and dirty and Haas and excuse me, and Paulo are running off the back fence straight down the middle, you're going to have Tino there as a big body to do a bit of defense, try and put some impact into that defense. And Cotter's not going to be the ball player when they're trying to shift to edges and, the forward link to the backs. It's going to be Tino.
The concern I had with that, we may as well start. We'll start with the forwards, but if New South Wales kick off, Papali'i has the first hit off, Tina has a second, all of a sudden you've either got Capel or Cotter, and they're going to pick that tackle to just pick them up and take them right back to where they started.
100%.
And that's when the crowd gets into the game, and that's what will set the tone. And that's where I would have had a bigger body starting. And they could have had Papali'i, Mo into Tino, and that's a different tone altogether.
And I didn't mention Collins, but to me, he's a question mark. He is the only question mark I have in that Queensland selection team. As you mentioned, his form has been piss poor realistically. And he's not a massive, he's a massive guy, but he's not that big, thick body that runs through the middle of the field. He's realistically probably should be a back rower, but he's not quick enough. So if he's going to be running into the middle with Paulo and Haas and Madison and those guys, they're going to hit him around the middle and they're going to drive him backwards. So,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
Sorry to interrupt, but is this really, and again, I'm not trying to be like a conspiratorial Titan supporter or anything, but can we largely really put Lindsay Collins being picked over Mo Fotuaika to much more than one's playing for an informed side, the Roosters, and one's playing for a shit team, the Titans? Because again, I agree with you guys, in terms of tactically, it doesn't make sense either. It's in terms of form of the individual players, it doesn't make sense.
Lindsay Collins does have good form in the Queensland camp, but so does Mo.
They both.
There's not a day in the world that I've watched both players that I would have picked Lindsay over Mo. But
I would almost, I would be considering starting Carrigan at lock, put it that way, for all the reasons I've said about having some size and getting the game underway. But very quickly before we get into a full analysis of the forward pack, Billy Slater, Cameron Smith is the new coaching staff, as Ollie can attest to after his breakfast this morning. What did you learn
JT's in there as well, isn't he?
And JT, what did you learn from them this morning, Oliver? And what influence do you think they will have across this squad?
Well, I've said this just sort of in general about Origin coaches before. It's more a mentoring role. It's not about being an out-and-out coach tactically and stuff like that. So you do want your your Origin legends for either side. That's who you sort of want as your coaching staff. And arguably more than anyone else, Slater, Smith, and Thurston.
Could you think of three better mentors in the Origin arena?
And you know what as well? It was just sort of, and again, I know this isn't a huge thing, but literally walking around Parramatta today, the different Queensland players were sort of off doing their own thing. They were walking around. They were chatting to fans. They were having a laugh. They were doing a bit of whatever. And again, I saw Slater and Smith. They weren't around any of the team or anything. They were just off on their morning walk. Now, to me, I sort of see that as a bit of leniency as well. It's not sort of fully structured. Come on, boys, we've all got to be together at all times, sort of, which I think, at least I've sort of heard coaches in the past have sort of do. Everyone's got to be together. It's sort of that more leniency. Then we'll all come together and we'll sort of do our thing at training, etc. So I think it's more about being a mentor. I think that's what's worked for Andrew Johns and Brad Fittler as well, right? You want to talk about Origin legends. There's two of them. And I think at the moment as well, especially when it's sort of fresh, when it's sort of new as well, and those guys coming in. And you know what? Mal Meninga was a great coach for years, obviously. But I think what's important too when bringing in a coaching staff for Origin, you want to bring in the players who inspired your current squad. Now, a lot of these Queensland players, again, it's not a huge thing, but a lot of these Queensland players just would not have watched Mal Meninga growing up, right? But I tell you who they would have watched. They would have watched the three blokes who
absolutely
were the key components of that 8 series in a row win. So you can't tell me like your Ruben Cotters, your Nanais, etc., have not watched these blokes growing up and haven't been in awe of them. They're going to be listening to everything they say. They're going to be doing everything they can to impress these three blokes.
Absolutely. Any to add, Mark?
Not from me, mate. No.
All right. Where do you want to start? You go back to front to back?
Well, I've gone. Tell me, I've got it all here, so you just tell me. I'll go with it. I'm starting to feel the pressure because honestly, the last 3 weeks, you blokes have been pissing in my pocket that much. It was about analysis and how we're going to break down a game of football. We generally don't spend that much time on a preview.
Yeah, that's right.
But
let's just talk
this
about it.
time,
Let's just go. We're going
I'm
to kick
actually
off.
going to try and tear this apart, and I
All right.
hope that this comes exactly how I think it's going, because I've gone what I think's going to happen and what I think might happen as well. So we'll see how we go.
Well, let's go
pause,
from.
Pause. Listeners
Give me
at
a
home,
position.
get your
and
popcorn.
we'll get there.
Yep, and listen to the greatness.
We used to remember we used to just have a beer and go, fuck, we'll smash it. Who cares? Anyway, so we'll start from the start. So we've kicked off. Let's go with the front row, including we'll go with the front row rotation, so you can throw in your Campbell Gillard's discussion if you want to. You don't have to. We can talk about
I've got the bench separate from the front row.
All right. Well, so
starting
Haas.
front row.
So we've got Haas and is it Palo now or
Bolo?
And against Papaihi and Tino.
Mm-hmm.
How does this matchup strike you, Bun?
Oh, this is probably the biggest battle in the entire game, to be honest, because I think the winner of this, you could add the bench to it as well, but I think the team that wins the middle of this game actually gets away with it at the end. I think it's going to be a close game for the majority of it, but I think New South Wales just have a few more impact men that can play right through the middle of the field compared to what Queensland's going to have. And I think they're probably going to last a little bit longer, because you've got Tino and Papali'i, who they are massive impact forwards. Don't get me wrong. They're going to be playing offloads. They're going to be tearing into the middle of the field. But you've got Haas and Bolo, and then you add in your Madisons and a few more from the bench. But we're talking about the straight up middle at the moment. But I think Haas just goes a little bit longer than both Tino and Papali'i, and then you add Bolo in there. I think his impact, it depends how much he's on. Like, realistically, he's a little bit hit and miss for a premier front rower. Like, on his day, he can tear the middle of the field apart, and then he has days where he just doesn't seem to be wanting to get involved. But I think in this battle, Payne Haas is probably the one that's just going to go longer and stronger. He has the offload. He can defend. And at the end of the day, if there was one front rower out of these four that you could put out there and tell them that they needed to play 80 minutes, Payne Haas could do it. So I just think that the New South Wales engine room will run a little bit longer than Queensland's will.
Oliver, anything to add there?
Well, it's interesting what Barney said, because it might be a little inkling of his prediction. However, it's a really close matchup the more you look at it, especially the form that Papali'i's come into in recent weeks. Probably about a month ago, you'd go New South Wales wins the battle easy, because whilst Junior Paulo has not been the same player, and we've said it before, not been the same player as he has realistically since 2020, he's never really been bad either. So hopefully by that, you'd think he sort of just by association sort of steps up in Origin. He's going to have to against Tino and Papali'i as well. But I agree. I think it's going to be a grind in the middle. The first 20 minutes are going to be rough and tough, and I think it's going to come from these four blokes predominantly, especially what I believe Daggy brought up with Queensland's forward pack overall. The first 20 minutes is going to be Tino and Papali'i heavy. Then your cavalry, like your Lindsay Collins and your Patrick Carrigans, are going to come on, sort of your bigger bodies there. So I think the first 20 minutes is where these guys are going to really have their impact on the game. I would say a bit of touch and feel, especially when the teams aren't quite, and I don't think they'll sort of be spreading the ball too much for that first 15, 20-minute period. And then it'll come back towards sort of the end of the game from your 60-minute mark, etc., where I think they're rejuvenated, they come back on, and then it's a bit more of an open game as well. So they might have a bit more, as Barney would say, time and space. And I think that's sort of how these four players, how it's going to play out for them.
Very good. The back row, Murray, Sims, and Yo against Capel, Kafusi, and Ruben Cotter.
I just think there's more pace. There's more leg speed in the New South Wales team than there is in the Queensland team. I think this is probably the biggest uptick in the New South Wales team that you could find. I think Sims will end up reverting to being a middle player, and they'll rely more on their bench to add a little bit on the edges there with what the guys that you're going to come off the bench. But realistically, I can't see Capewell being a ball player, and I can't see Kafusi being a ball player either. They're basically going to be the guys that are going to run the tram lines and hopefully run over the top of centres and wingers and halves and maybe score a try here or there. But if you put that up against your Yos and your Murrays, the blokes that have second phase play, strong leg speed, that can play before the line, can play in the line, and their defence is fantastic. They generally don't miss tackles. I think New South Wales have got a massive advantage in the back row.
I agree. I assume Camaro is fit. As a sensational, interesting thing you talk about ball playing is what they're obviously going to have roles, but whose role is what? Given when you throw Paulo into that, you got 3 link players there, Paulo, whatever they call him these days. Junior into that.
He'll play ball playing.
Ball, if they're going to take it, you'll
play
one job here.
Phase. It'll be straight up the guts and an offload. But
and I'm assuming Murray's there for his 56 tackles and quick play the ball. So they'll keep it simple over Yo, but they've got that option. The point is they've got a bit more, I think, skill than the others. Kafusi will tackle his ass off and work very hard. But if you just take that slit of the 2 team lists, it does look like a lopsided. You got 2 blokes that we talk about in the top 5 players in the game regularly against
and ball players as well,
and ball players against 3 blokes that are basically feel like they've been picked to make 140 tackles between them. Carrigan playing, I assume, will play 45, 50 minutes will help counter that, because I think he'll get to the stage, he'll get to that level at some point. And we'll get to the bench, but Ryan Madison could actually be a massive tick for New South Wales, because he will, in the back half of this first half, be the one standing with 3 blokes on him and getting that space to get popping a ball out to a Murray or a Cook, and that's where points will come from. So that is, we talk about Tarek Sims. Geez, you'd be licking lips if you had Angus Crichton wearing the 11 with his 2 mates around him, but he's not. So big game for Tarek. He'll either secure his spot for the rest of the series or be very much exposed. Ollie.
Yeah, well, I sort of look at this again like the last one, sort of the little periods, because it's the starting forward pack, right? So these guys are probably going to have around 20 minutes to start the game. In that period, I'd say New South Wales are probably going to be dominant overall, but especially here with Murray and Yo, when the ball starts getting spread out a bit more and when the 2 sides start to get a bit more creative with it, Yo and Murray could arguably be the catalyst for this in terms of that sort of quick play, that ball playing as well. But this is going to be a big game for Felice Kafusi, I think, especially compared to what he's up against and who's beside him. Ruben Cotter and Kurt Capewell were not bad players by any sense of the imagination, and they both deserve to be there. But the way Queensland side set up, Kafusi's really going to have to put in a shift again, especially for that first 20 minutes. We've seen Kafusi for years now as sort of a consistent Queensland and Australian player who does his job and fits well on the side. I feel like this might be the year where he sort of has to put in that extra effort, and we're going to have to start noticing him in particular if Queensland are going to be any chance of getting on top of New South Wales in that first 20 minutes, especially up against your Murrays and Yos. And if Tarek Sims has sort of played into form here as well, that's only going to add nightmares for Queensland. So overall, obviously, I think New South Wales are going to have the advantage and be on top to sort of start the game here with these 3 players. But if Felice Kafusi can put in that shift early, he's going to have a real big impact on Queensland. And again, it's going to be a bit different because the likes of a Yo can play 80 minutes. Murray, if he wasn't just coming back from injury as well, but again,
probably still play 60 or 70 minutes.
He will still be there for a large chunk of the game. So I guess we don't really need to talk about sort of necessary periods for them. But the one thing I will say is when Ryan Madison likely comes on for Tarek Sims, the way Queensland reacts to that could decide the game, really.
The dummy halves, Damien Cook, Ben Hunt, and you can, for the sake of argument, throw Harry Grant into this discussion. Ollie, do you want to lead us away?
Yeah, so Harry Grant's going to be there for the majority of the game. In the early stages, I think Ben Hunt will play a very traditional hooker role because that's what he's there to do. But about 15 minutes into the game, when Harry comes onto the field, I think that's where we'll see that shift. I feel like Harry will be the hooker for most of the game when he comes on. Ben Hunt will be playing more a sort of a third half. And I believe, was it in 2020, could have been even 2017 at a stretch. No, it wouldn't have been 2020, I think, where there was that 20-minute period that sort of won Queensland one of the games there where Cherry Evans, Munster and Hunt, those three players were playing with three halves on the field and they were all playing as halves and it ended up working out for Queensland. I feel like this is sort of the idea from Billy Slater, but it's not just going to be a 20-minute period. It's going to be the majority of the game with Harry Grant playing at hooker. I feel like overall in terms of the hooker position, Queensland's got to have the tick here. Again, it's if by association that origin form can sort of come back for Cook. He can be deadly, but I just think what he's up against and sort of what Queensland are looking to do here with Harry coming off the bench and Ben Hunt starting, I've got to give the tick to Queensland.
I can see, yes, as I said, if anyone's ever going to win man of the match off the bench, I think Harry Grant, if Queensland win, it's going to be back of Harry Grant, one, being fit and well, and two, creating that doubt. He's outshone Cook a number of times in the last couple of years. His ability to engage both markers and almost the first defender a lot of time, and then pick where he wants to go or pick off someone is scary, especially the combination with Munster when they want to run that ball. And I think he holds a lot of the key to this game. I think the other two are serviceable and be fine, but I think he'll be the big talking point, Barn.
I think the first 15, 20 minutes of this game, I'm expecting New South Wales to want to play the first 15, 20 minutes of this game really quickly. Gas out your Tinos and your Papali'is, play in and around the ruck. Damien Cook getting out, putting blokes into half gaps and then, bending the line. If they can get quick play the balls for the first 15, 20 minutes of the game, I think this sets up New South Wales to win this game. And then I expect them to actually slow it down and then pull Whiten back in out of the centres, back into probably playing 13 and have three halves on the field. And then Crichton goes back into centre. And that's the game plan I think they're going to go with anyway. So if New South Wales can get the speed of the play ball for the first 20 minutes, I think it'll have a massive impact on this game. And Cook may actually look like the best player on the field for the first 20 minutes. The only problem is they don't have anyone in there to give him any real relief unless you're going to try and take him off for 15, 20 minutes and then get Luai and Crichton and the outside backs to share a bit of that work in the middle, but I can't see it happening. He's probably going to have to play 80 minutes and he's going to get slowed down at some point. And then the fact that Queensland are probably going to have to use two players because I don't think they're going to be able to win the middle enough to get the advantage out of Hunt starting the game, which they have done in previous games. Harry Grant needs to start this game and he needs to play 80 minutes. They may change it before the game starts, but I can't see them, unless they dominate the middle of the field for the first half an hour, I can't see Queensland getting a massive advantage out of hooker, but using two players, they probably will get an advantage out of the hooker position.
The backs, we get to the outside. We'll start with the outside backs first, centers and wingers.
Start with the
Center
wingers,
three
yeah.
quarters. You'll just do wingers, you'll do all four.
I've got wingers, centers, yeah.
All right. Tuo and Tupou against Coates and Cobbo. Excitement seeing Cobbo, excitement machine Cobbo, and out of form Coates against arguably the best jumper in the game, Tupou, and the best workhorse winger in the game, Tuo. Barn, how do they match up?
Oh, there's obviously an aerial threat from Queensland, and that's an absolute advantage, but they need to be able to park themselves down on New South Wales 20 to 30 metre line to get an advantage out of that. Ball goes up, it's always a 50-50 thing as well, so that sort of decreases your odds. New South Wales should have an advantage getting out of their back end, being able to rest their forwards a little bit with To'o and Tupou. I know we've copped a lot of shit off a few different people saying that Tupu's soft and he doesn't do, but he does a lot of hard work out of his back end. And yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, I'll argue with those people when I want to talk to them. But yeah, Queensland have a better attacking threat, but New South Wales have a distinct advantage out of meters out of their own end. The advantage goes to Queensland, realistically, because if they can jag 2 tries or 2 or 3 tries out of their wingers just with, kick and hope to the corners, then, it's an absolute advantage for Queensland.
Queensland have the 2 wingers who can score from anywhere, which we don't have. Cobbo's your, well, ironically, your Adokar or your Trell or your Jared Hayne that can come up with a single-handed play late in the game, late in the half,
Absolutely.
to turn a 6-point lead into a 12-point lead or whatever it might be. And really looking forward to seeing how he matches up, whether he takes some time to get involved. I imagine he's going to be doing a lot of the kick returns early. I'm sure they'll try and kick and gas him and turn him around as much as they can. It does give him that option, the traditional Brisbane option of kicking behind him and making him turn and go back and work, particularly.
Well, Ponga's not going to do it.
I was going to say, particularly with a fullback who doesn't do a lot of it himself. So there is a short kicking plan that they could use to much better effect than trying to go aerial here. If they, and you'd think, as you've said, with their forward back, they'd be in a better position to do so. You know what you're going to get. What more can you say about New South Wales wingers is that then you can have 99% confidence in what they're going to deliver you. They're going to give you the work. They're going to be solid, and it's almost an area you don't have to worry about beyond.
Realistically, they've tried to take out one attacking position by putting Tupu on one wing. So they've basically gone, well, you can't kick to that wing. You're going to have to kick to Tuo. And
he's going to run.
They tried that last year, and it didn't work that well because you had, Whiten or whoever was in the centres coming in. It'll probably end up being Crichton to cover in behind him. But yeah, they're hoping to take 3 tries and make it 1 over the top of Toe. But
yeah, Ollie.
Well, in terms of the different areas or positions on the field, this is probably the most exciting, I'd say. But of course, wingers are exciting. But yeah, but looking at the 4 wingers on display, I'm very excited to see what we could get from each one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian Toto, for one, I think since coming back from injury, he's still been good, but he's not the Brian Toto that runs 300 meters a game and does a whole lot of work of
He's
old.
only been running 200.
He's only, which again,
he also hasn't had to.
I hate bringing this up, but it is something where he's had a drop off, but he's still.
But now he's got now he's got May and Targo to help him, whereas last year he had to look at Charlie Staines on one wing. Like,
of course, and I think that has a lot to come into play. So it will be interesting to see when he's got Tupou, Staggs, and Whiten, like the impact he has on this game in particular. If we can see sort of a possible return to form from him, because if we do, New South Wales could win the winger battle based off of Brian Toto alone. However, I have to agree with both of you that overall Queensland have got the in-form wingers. They've got Coates, give or take, but they've got the better suited wingers. A variety of options in attack, as you guys said. So it's easy on paper, at least for now. You got to go with Cobbo and Coates, and we've been singing the praises of Cobbo for weeks now as well. And this is where it's got to continue and take him to that next level.
The centres, Staggs and Whiten against Holmes and Gagai Oliver.
Well, there's the one, I won't say sore thumb sticking out. There is that one elephant in the room, Jack Whiten. And again, this is just my brain sort of thinking of different things. And of course, Crichton could start. There's a good chance he will. However, for now, I look at this as possibly, you talk about Harry Grant we talk about Harry Grant and Ben Hunt and how if Grant comes on, Hunt can play sort of a third half. This could be trying to combat that. Whereas when they come on, you possibly bring on.
This will be exactly what happens is when Harry Grant comes on, Whiten will go back into 13 and they'll both have 3 halves on the field.
Playing
I almost guarantee that's exactly what will happen.
I'm glad we're on that wavelength. That's sort of what I'm basing this whole Whiten thing on. If he starts, which now that we've sort of thought of this, that you know what, he probably will start now. Kotoni Staggs, I think at the start of the year, was letting up a little in his attack and not bringing the same attacking flair. We mentioned that. However, I think his defense improved in those games. And of course, because defense isn't as flashy necessarily, it wasn't being noticed a whole lot. However, his defensive improvement, I should say,
Massive.
is going to help him here in this game. But you've got Valentine Holmes who's been played back into attacking form as well. So I think you're going to have to heavily rely on Staggs being that defensive player and Holmes being that attacking threat, which is why I think probably it'll match up Staggs up against Holmes, because I think Staggs is probably the best option to try and stop Holmes with the current form he's in.
And that's Munster's preferred side. That's the only thing that worries me, to be honest. He loves going to that left-hand side.
And I think Gagai as well. There's a whole meme and everything about how he turns up for Origin, etc. And I think this is sort of built up for him to have a solid performance in the Origin arena again. Obviously, at Newcastle, hasn't been the best. He started off the season well. I believe he was injured for a period there, wasn't he, as well?
He was, 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. So I think with Gagai, it could be hit or miss. We might not get the best Gagai performance, just based on sort of coming back to his club. He started off the season hot, but then again, we could see the Dane Gagai of old. And if he matches up against Whiten for, let's say, the first 20 or so minutes until Harry Grant comes on, he'll have the best opportunity to get back to his Origin form.
It's very interesting. In a way, I'd almost rather see Staggs on Gagai because they're both bully centres. They're both, in these sort of games, want to try and get an early shot in and sort of be the one that stamps a dominant, stamps themselves as the dominant force over their opponent. So I'm interested to see if they do start off that way, because Staggs and Holmes is interesting because you mentioned the Munster factor, but Staggs is, and he's quite good at picking his spots, but his first instinct is to rush up and hit. And Holmes's pace, maybe can counteract that with the right people around him. So interesting to see which way they do line up, as you've said. I don't think one's going to let anyone down necessarily, but he's now played 5'8" for 4 or 5 years, and it's a hard thing to then either be expected to mark Holmes with the form he's in, or an Origin Gagai as such. So, Barn, you'll cover this off a bit better, and your wheels are ticking there, Ollie.
Can I just on Whiten as well? I think we should acknowledge the fact too that we've been saying for weeks now that for Canberra, Whiten should be playing in the centres. Maybe Freddie's just had that sort of spark in his mind a little bit earlier, and maybe from this probably won't happen. If Whiten has a decent game in the centres for New South Wales and actually sort of proves it in a big game that he's a decent centre going back to Canberra, Sticky might go, oh, that's an option.
Yeah. What I'm thinking,
we thought of it weeks ago.
I think Freddie just trusts Whiten. He's been in the squad.
I think the way that that Freddie wants to use Whiten is basically the Kikau Penrith factor, because you've got that left hand set up already. So I think in the first 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to see Whiten running directly at Gagai. He's going to be running straight at him, trying to run over the top of him. He's a big body, and there probably will be once or twice where he will leave Gagai behind him when he runs over the top of him, because his defense is, like, everyone says he's like the best defensive center in the entire competition. This year, he is far from the best defensive center in the competition. He's missed more tackles than I've noticed in recent memory for the 14 rounds. I think he's only played 10 of them. But the 10 rounds he's been there, he's been high on the stats of missed tackles in the centres. So I think you're going to see Whiten running directly at him, trying to gas him. He'll go back inside, and then you'll have Crichton with the footwork and the speed, and they're going to pump that left-hand side, and they're going to try and work Gagai over. and then you have the winger trying to come in and cover him, or the second rower trying to cover him as well. And I can see Queensland leaking quite a few points on that left-hand side. And I think they're going to target Gagai, and I think that's where a lot of points will come for New South Wales. I think Holmes and Staggs pretty much cancel each other out. It's a matter of fact of how much ball they can get to Gagai in that first 20 or 30 minutes, and how much he can expose Whiten's defensive inefficiencies on that left-hand side. And I'm not sure that it's going to happen, to be honest, because by the time that they're ready to spread the ball to that right-hand side, I think you're going to have Crichton there, who, even if he does beat him on the first attempt, Crichton will wrap him up and the ball will have to go somewhere else. So,
for the record, Campbell Graham's the best defensive centre in the game. The fullback is James Tedesco against Kalen Ponga. Teddy, I think, clearly gives a defensive advantage, potentially a read advantage, and is more than capable of saving multiple tries, which he has that tick over Ponga, in my humble. We'll see what Ponga does bring, because it is missing from his game. See if he can lift it this next level. We know what we get from Ponga with his sweep plays. He'll choose to chime in when he can. I can see Teddy will play like he has done, much more direct than he does for Easts. I think he'll just be looking left and right of the ruck, looking for just that half break, which he can make a full break and just be sniffing for offloads more than trying to dominate like he does at Easts. So back end of the half, first half, I can see Teddy more involved, but that'll be the natural result of what we've talked about with the forwards, I feel. But I think it's not really bringing much here. The best fullback in the comp has looked at the last month or so. So I think he brings that here, does he not, Barn?
Oh, everything you've said, mate. On form, Teddy should win this matchup hands down, and it's going to depend on whose forward pack's got the roll through the middle and who's got time and space to expose the edges. Teddy likes to go down that left-hand side as well, so you add him in there with your Crichtons and your Whiten, and whoever else is on that left-hand side. Toto, I would imagine, is probably down that. No, it might be Tupu, but just you got Luai and Cleary on the inside as well, and add in Yo and Murray and whoever else decides to pop up there. I think the right-hand side of the Queensland defence is in for a rough night, especially when you add in Teddy into that mix. Ponga's forms and his involvement is questionable for the entire year. When they're on top, he's a world beater. When they're getting pushed backwards, he basically goes missing. So,
my turn.
Yes.
You pointed to Barney Daggy, by the way. Just pointed then. What helps Ponga here? Because Teddy obviously gets the advantage on paper here based off of form, largely the past 3 years, right? Like, you got to go with Teddy. But I guess what may help Ponga, and Ponga has had a couple of really strong Origin performances as well, which he very well could do here. But what helps Ponga here in terms of the sweep play and actually trying to do stuff and have that bit of X factor impact is he's not playing behind a gargantuan gaggle of geeks for the first time this year.
Yes.
So that will certainly be an advantage to Ponga. However, when Teddy's been doing it week in, week out, I think largely you've got to give Tedesco the nod here. Look, this is probably, with no intention of disrespecting the talent that Kalen Ponga is, this has probably got to be the easiest area on the field to pick, right? It's James Tedesco easy.
Yes, that's right. We're not comparing him to any of the injured New South Wales blokes that might have taken his job at one point. At the end of the day.
But then again, the past month or so, he has really come back into form, because a little while ago we were talking about, maybe Tedesco might just get picked as he is an incumbent and he's the captain, and he would have got picked anyway. But I feel like the past month he's certainly justified the selection.
100%. So we get to the halves. I'll just pause for a sec. You right, Bun?
He's on mute, I think, but I'm
No,
busting
he's
for a
on mute.
piss.
Yeah, no, go to uniquely mute that and press that and turn that back on. No one knew that I was not screen recording. Who wants to have first crack at these halves?
First, a question.
Why is Dickie Nisa? Oh, there he is.
When you said PVL at one point is going to have to choose one of these blokes to be halfback, was that a joke or did you genuinely?
Apparently, he's the new chairman of selectors.
Yeah, chairman of selectors for the
Yeah, him
Australian
and the
squad.
two Origin coaches are the chairman of selectors. We didn't talk
Oh,
about
there
it
we
in the
go.
news,
Well,
but and I haven't read the full
okay,
article, but that's
yeah,
Yeah,
congratulations.
PVL's apparently crowbarred himself into the fucking
and the others have been sacked in the first. Apparently,
commissioner
the first.
of selections.
I forget who the old select. Oh, Laurie. I think Laurie
It was
Daly's
Mel,
one.
wasn't it?
Laurie, yeah, Mal's the coach, but Laurie said the first he knew about it was when they read the headlines on his show. But anyway, they.
I don't want Australia to win the thing.
Well, actually, very quick question because we don't.
They could fucking pick DCE as prop and they'd probably still win.
Yeah, but like the most chances are possible for them to not win.
You know what's frustrating? You know what?
Well, DCE at props probably a pretty good pick if
I don't
they
want
want to lose.
When you're versing bloody Italy or someone, yeah.
I don't want to degenerate into the weekly show too much, but the one question I have is: does that mean if you're not in these two squads, you can get picked for Australia?
No.
Like it isn't because obviously they don't rate anyone not in these squads.
Well, you
No,
can,
absolutely. If you're not in the Queensland or New South Wales squad, you're not getting picked unless half of them decide to play for Samoa and Tonga, and then they'll have to find someone. But
then, like Mal might have his incumbency rules and might want Angus Crichton as his starting second rower.
He probably will.
Mal's already come out and said that he's still considering at the moment, like Jake Travojevic as part of the Australian team, for example.
Yeah, well, there's Jake. There'd be Crichton.
Jake will be back in the New South Wales squad by the end of the Origin series, I would imagine.
And then we'll get to predictions in a minute. And then so Harry Grant can't be the Australian hooker because Billy Slater doesn't think he's a hooker, a starting hooker. Right?
Well, it is realistically.
Anyway,
I know it used to be, but again, this is sort of Origin/international. But is Origin really a trial for the Australian team anymore?
Well, I think that's what they're making it, but no, it should.
Origin's the best game of football that you're going to see in the entire anywhere in the NRL landscape. But
and there's a whole half of a season to go yet. We're still, you still at finals footy, still a peak there, whatever it
injuries, fucking suspensions, all the rest of it. But
anyway, our halves, Luai, as I said, whoever I said before, Munster and DCE, Luai and Cleary, who wanted first crack? Go on, Dickie.
No, come on, get him most of it.
Oh, you've never established who Dickie was before.
He's bobbing around there on the screen. Look, there he is.
So Barney goes first then.
Get into it, Ollie. Fucking just do your shit, damn it.
All right, but I'll have to go to the toilet first. Anyway, well, New South Wales obviously has the advantage of a tried and true halves combination at club level. This is what Brad Fittler went with last year. It worked throughout the series, well, at least game 1 and 2 for New South Wales, but also Munster and Daly Cherry Evans at this point, you've got to say, are tried and tested at Origin level. They've also got the Origin experience. Nathan Cleary, while he's still playing well, consistently week on week, not as good as he has been the past couple of years. Cameron Munster coming back to form. I'd say Daly Cherry Evans has still been solid for Manly, not overall as good as he has been last year. And Jerome Luai in the past couple of weeks has gotten hot. So you've got sort of your 2 5/8s, I'd say hot at the moment. If you will, Luai probably a bit more in that current purple patch. And you got your halves, Cleary and Daly Cherry Evans, where it's sort of been a similar story, not exactly to the same extent. They've dropped a little bit overall, really. It's going to be a tight matchup, arguably the toughest to pick. And again, we speak about what could decide the game for a number of different positions, but realistically, your halves can win your football games. It's whoever really clicks on the night. I'm going to go with a feeling here. Game 1, Munster and Cherry Evans.
I'm going to go back to what I've said previously. Unless Queensland get a roll through the middle and get good speed to play the ball, Munster's the best half in the game, or best creative half in the game. He's not the best dominant half in the game. That's Cleary. Cleary is the best dominant half in the game. He decides where games get played. His kicking game is better than anybody out there. He's long kicking, short kicking, and his ball playing is as close to the best. But off the cuff, if you can get up and into your defensive into your attacking positions, Munster has the most creative ball playing game in the competition. So realistically, to me, they sort of they even each other out. So unless Queensland have the roll on through the middle, Munster will be dominant. But if the game gets slowed down to a point where the kicking game is all that matters, Cleary has a better kicking game than anybody in the competition. I think if it's long kicking game, short kicking game, attacking, defensive, whatever. Like you can put DC up there, and yes, he has a good long kicking game, but under pressure, he seems to sort of wilt. And if you have Luai on the outside of Cleary with a roll forward through the middle, New South Wales win this hands down. But I'm not 100% sure that I think this middle battle in this game is going to be immense. It's going to be 60 minutes of the 80 minutes of who actually is going to win this game. And if it comes down to that, Cleary will probably win New South Wales this game just with his pinpoint kicking game, because DCE has it, but he just doesn't have it as often as Cleary does. And yeah, Munster on the back of broken field play and up-tempo play the balls could tear New South Wales apart, but I just don't see it happening. So I've got a slight advantage to New South Wales only on the fact of the kicking game from Cleary, to be honest.
Yeah, I would want to see Cleary. Look, I suspect New South Wales probably kick early. Early in the game and set their line like Penrith do a lot, I suppose, and just use their size and try and pin, like I said, pin your Cotters and your Capewells in their half before there's much momentum.
Second and third hit-ups.
I would like to see and just get Ponga and Cobbo turning around, and that'll be the key. If they can do that, they will gas them. We've all spoken before, but Barney, I think you articulated it well 6 weeks ago when you said Melbourne at their best have the fastest and best 1, 6, 9, and 7 in the game. Ponga and DCE fit into that not far off. Ponga quick enough and with enough space can be dangerous, and DCE basically has to play Jerome Hughes, kick well, and
run occasionally.
Occasionally. We're on enough where he's drawing someone in it here and there. And I guess the sort of the 2.5 here is that you've got a number 9 in Ben Hunt capable of kicking 40-20 and very good at it, kicking 40-20s and pinning players perhaps from a different angle. So
Harry can do the same job.
100% actually. So look, I am putting in this environment, I'm saying Cleary's most valuable, but terrified of a fit and firing, which is now Munster. If they've got the space and if they're starting to isolate your Whitens, he's going to go there time and again and be very dangerous. It's an exciting matchup. And we haven't even really mentioned Luai, who I think mainly he might have 5 or 6 involvements all game and there'll be points from 3 of them, potentially, if he plays like he's been playing. So, especially once Crichton's on that field. Very, very interesting matchup, but I'm with you. I'm giving decision to New South Wales on points with the kicking game there. We get to the bench, Crichton at Martin, RCG, and Madison against Grant, Collins, Carrigan, and Nanai. And I think it's a clear edge, even without Nico in the team, to New South Wales just on the forward strength, because my biggest concern from the start, as I've said, is the Queensland pack matching up. I don't think, like we've all touched on Lindsay Collins enough, Carrigan is a star and will do well. And you're throwing what's now, 19? A 19-year-old guy who has an error in him, and we can talk all we want about him being a star and a point scorer. He's good for 2-3 errors a game, and he's about to be put under the biggest blowtorch he's faced, where we know Martin's going to straighten New South Wales up at some point. and we know RCG is going to just play on, set up sets for them. And you can talk about in a sec, Barn, because you did it off air, but Madison, you could argue, is one of the form forwards in the competition, and his work in the middle when they need him could be very, very will be crucial to New South Wales. Ollie, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, definitely the edge, excuse me, goes to New South Wales in terms of the bench, right, and how the bench is set out. And I think really my sort of concerns with Queensland's bench and our concerns are sort of been brought up when we were talking about the 4-pack specifically. We know the changes we'd make and we know the impact those players would sort of have. Whereas mostly New South Wales have sort of got their bench set out strong and with a clear indicator of what gaps they're going to sort of fill at what points in the game. Like you'd think of Madison comes on for Tarek Sims when he starts getting a bit tired, and you could bring on Liam Martin realistically for Murray or Yo and do a little bit of changing if you were to bring him on for Yo and Murray drops to lock. But I think Yo plays 80 minutes. So you bring him on for Murray, who is still coming back from injury. So a lot of it makes sense. What doesn't entirely make sense is, of course, Stephen Crichton. You'd probably have him starting. But I guess what we've sort of talked ourselves into tonight, or talked ourselves into sort of the thinking of why Whiten's there, it does make a bit more sense with Crichton to come into the centres whenever Queensland brings Harry on, or not too long after Queensland brings Harry on, and you shift Whiten to realistically sort of a third half. Now, whether that impacts Cleary and Luai negatively, I don't think it will. I think it'd more be Cleary realistically dictating when Whiten's brought into the play. So overall, you'd have to give the tick to New South Wales.
I actually think there's part of me that thinks maybe we're overthinking the White and Crichton thing, and maybe the simple thing Freddie's thinking is if Pappenhausen's fit, he would have been 14. So Crichton's only going to do the Pappenhausen job where he's going to come on for 15 minutes, sniff around the ruck, play, maybe give Cook a breather,
through the middle,
and play through the middle. Maybe that's what he does. Okay. I'm not saying, but maybe that's the thinking. Maybe it's simply that it would have been Pappenhausen, it will be in game 2, and we'll give Crichton a game.
It's not the worst thinking in the world, and it's probably making me think that it might be 13 plus, because if they can soften up the middle enough and then add Crichton through the middle, then. But I honestly think the whole Whiten thing is to soften up that left edge, because that's where Penrith play. That's where New South Wales have played for the last couple of years, and I think they're going to target Gay Guy for the first 20, 30 minutes and try to get him out on his feet. And who does Queensland have to slot into that right-hand side defensive position? Unless they push Cotter out there to make a whole heap of tackles, and he's not going to stop Crichton if he puts a step on or put some speed on. So, yeah, to me, it looks like Penrith, New South Wales, the Penrith, New South Wales Blues. We may as well chuck it in there. They're going to target that left-hand defensive, left-hand attacking edge, right-hand defensive edge for Queensland. And I think the majority of the points from New South Wales are going to come down that edge. It's going to be from Whiten softening up Gay Guy, and then Crichton dancing around and putting his winger away or the inside man away. But to me, the bench actually comes out as a draw. I think that the Queensland team actually has more skill coming off the bench with Harry Grant will add more skill and variety to the team, but the New South Wales bench has more physical contact and consistency through the middle of the field. And I think that's basically where New South Wales game plan is going to come through the middle of the field, and they're going to soften up the guts of Queensland's defense for 40 to 50 minutes, and then they're going to score points on the edges after that. So,
fair enough. Let's get our Bunny laid out for us. Then, how is this game going to unfold in your humble?
It comes down to the speed of the play the ball. Both teams are going to want to dominate the speed of the play the ball for the first 20 to 30 minutes, and I don't think as soon as Papali'i and Tino probably won't get taken off the field, he'll probably only for maybe 15 minutes, but he's going to be shifted to an edge, I would imagine, at some point, and they're going to pull Cotter into the middle, and Yananai is going to play on the other edge, and they're probably even going to pull Kafusi into the middle just because
I feel like
he's
Carrigan's
a
going to
really
spend his time in
strong.
the middle.
Yeah, Carrigan and Kafusi, because they're strong defenders. But they're going to spend too much time trying to defend in the middle when New South Wales want to shift to an edge, and they're going to get caught out on the edges. The big thing for me is that New South Wales halves can play slow if they need to. Cleary knows how to slow a game down, and if he has to, it'll be 3 or 4 forced dropouts. When New South Wales are gassed and Queensland are gassed and everybody's got no energy, Cleary will just kick in behind them and they'll have to drop it out off their own line. And they'll have to do it again 5 minutes later. And then they'll have to do it again 15 minutes after that. And I can't see Queensland being able to put the energy up through the middle of the field, especially with your Madisons coming on. And then your Sims having a 30-minute spurt and then coming back, and he'll probably be pushed into the middle for the last 30. And I just think New South Wales will be more dominant through the middle of the field, which will provide the space and the time on the edges for New South Wales to be able to pull this Queensland team apart. I don't think they'll, only because of conditions. I think the second game, they probably will blow Queensland off the field. And I think it'll be a 2-0 thing going up into Queensland, and they'll probably lose the third game. But I think New South Wales will dominate through the middle of the field, offloads. Because how many forwards in the Queensland team can provide offloads apart from Papali'i and Tino?
Yeah, that's it.
I can't see anybody. And then you've got Yo and Murray that can ball play on an edge. I wanted to go 13 plus, but I'm going New South Wales 1-12. First try scorer, I think Tony Staggs gets the first try. And then man of the match, I'm tossing up between Murray and Cleary because I can see Murray having a massive impact because they're going to target Yo because they know Yo is the guy that does it on the left. And I can see Murray providing some very good ball playing on the edges of the right-hand side of the field, and you might get 1 or 2 tries there early, and that'd be enough. Plus his 60 tackles to get him man of the match.
Oliver.
So again, this has been set up for the classic Queensland ambush. I've noticed a lot of time in previous years as well, but like obviously on paper, we've given New South Wales the most ticks, which seems to happen most years. Again, last year a bit of an exception because they went on and they really won game 1. However, again, for the reasons I said before, this is sort of set up for that Queensland ambush. I feel like we could see a situation here where the few imperfections New South Wales have come to the forefront because they're not necessarily, I wouldn't say prepared, but underestimated Queensland in certain senses, and Queensland's positives do have the ability to carry this game. Therefore, based on the previous experience for a lot of years, for some years in recent seasons, especially 2020, for the way this is just set up, the way Queensland have picked their side, the way New South Wales have picked their side, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say Queensland 13 plus. I'm going to say Harry Grant is going to be the man of the match. Hunt, Cherry Evans and Munster are going to be playing well off the back of him. They're going to be getting great service from him all game, and I feel like that's going to have a big impact on why he actually gets it for me, and I think he'll run the ball well as well when he comes on. And my first try scorer is going to be Selwyn Cobbo on his Origin debut.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is if Queensland can get the speed of the play of the ball, if they do win the speed of the play of the ball, exactly what you said. You're going to have your Munsters, DCEs, kicking, running, ball playing on the edges, and they've got so much more speed than what New South Wales have got. So the only reason, like obviously I've said I think New South Wales will dominate the middle, but if Queensland can match them in the middle, they will burn New South Wales on the edges.
Again, Barney, a lot of this does come back to that sort of, well, at least half Melbourne combination where they've got that speed in terms of the running game. And I think Grant
I just think New
and
South
Munster
Wales will be
carry that.
dominant in the middle, especially with their bench. But
I think you're both right but I'm tipping in this particular game. Well, I think you're right. The reason you're right, Ollie, is because the Queensland ambush is coming, but it's coming game 2 when they get to Perth on a dry track. But I think here they will. I think New South Wales kicking and size. I've sort of talked myself into New South Wales because I wasn't as bullish at the start, but I think New South Wales. I'm going 1-12, but I think they'll be bigger, stronger, and Cleary will kick better and be man of the match and just be able to pin them, work over where they need to work over, and the damper conditions suit. But I do think once they get to Perth, they'll see what they're up against in Perth, and then they'll play much more expansive and they'll play a much better running game and try and run around New South Wales than
Suncorp.
Either get here and then we'll go to Suncorp 1-1, and then it'll be a cracker. So. But I think this.
Do we
I
get
think New
Tommy
South Wales.
and Latrell back?
I think New South Wales. Well, just Latrell. We do, but I think this sets up.
Oh, yeah, Tommy's gone, isn't he?
I think this sets up for New South Wales to be ambushed well in Perth. But we'll get to that. 1-12, man of the match, Cleary. First try scorer will be. I want to do something cheeky, but I'm not. I'm just going to go. Actually, no, I will. I think it will be. I think it will be Cobbo. I think it will be. I was looking for a forward, but I think Queensland might usual shock barge over and just wake New South Wales up, and they'll get into their rhythm better. But rest of the series will be a cracker. Looking forward to it. Final question: if New South Wales lose, how many changes for game 2?
6.
Oh, I'd say at least 3. Do you want me to give you a couple of examples?
Yeah,
Go for it.
Cook will be out for Coruscant.
Mm-hmm.
Wyson will be out, possibly regardless. And I think Tarek Sims.
I can see. First of all, I think Pappenhausen's not far away. I haven't checked the team list today, but mail is he's around. I can see Latrell coming straight back in for Whiten, so I think that'll happen regardless of the result. And I can see Crichton coming back in if Tarek Sims is made to look like he's been made to look for St George this year. But anyway,
6 was probably a bit of a stretch, but
I think 3. And it could be
3's definite. I think you might if New South Wales lose, because to me the team they picked is to go straight through the middle. So if New South Wales lose, one of the starting props is going to lose their position, and it's not going to be Payne Haas. So it's going to be Junior Borlo, whether he goes back to the bench and they bring in another forward.
I could see him being parachuted right out of the squad, depending how RCG plays, and they dust off poor old man from Manly there, Jake, and wheel him out in the wheelchair and have him snap people.
Realistically, since Clem has come back from his injury, I don't know how he wasn't in the 24-man squad. Like he's been playing heaps better than fucking the Saifidi brother that fucking did absolutely nothing for 14 rounds and managed to get a spot there. Like Clemo, since he's come back from it was a broken arm or something, but he has been fucking close to the best prop in the game. And like he has to get a position, and then you got your Appy, White, and 4 or 5 position changes. Absolutely.
Anyway, looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. That's been our.
But they're not going to lose, so it doesn't matter.
Just a couple of questions before we finish up. Just for, I guess, but partly logistical reasons as well.
Ooh.
One, do we want to give a quick series prediction as well, just to see where we're at heading into the series? And 2, is the prestigious Ollie Lewis medal making a return for a second straight year? It just popped into
Ollie Lewis medal.
Yes.
For both?
Yes.
Yes. I'll kick us off with the prediction for the series.
Actually, and predict your man of the series too. Give us a prediction for your prestigious medal you've just made up.
Well, made up last year, but anyway.
You made it up last year.
Yeah. Harry Grant to win Player of the Series. I think he gets man of the match. Both games, Queensland wins. I'm tipping Queensland to win the series. Queensland game 1, flog New South Wales. New South Wales to flog Queensland game 2 in Perth, and Queensland to win within 5 minutes left in game 3.
I'm going New South Wales 2-1, and the reason I'm going 2-1 is they'll have Latrell Mitchell back in game 3.
Yep.
I would be going Queensland 2-1, if not, because I think they'll win in Perth, and I think they'll give it a red hot crack obviously taking it back to Suncorp sets them up perfectly there. And I think they'll work out they'll work out from game 1. They might even pick a certain front rower for game 2. But man of the series, I will say Isaiah Yeo, just because, he will probably be very good at football.
I'm going to go New South Wales 3-0.
I like how Barney just nodded like, yes, that was very sage. Yes.
I'm going New South Wales 3-0. I can't see Queensland being able to match New South Wales medals. I've got Cameron Murray, man of the series. I think he will have a massive impact. He's ball playing before the line, after the line, and his defensive capabilities is matched by very fucking few in the entire NRL. And yeah, well, if he loses a leg, then we'll have to reassess later, all right?
Down. You know what? If he loses an arm, he'll probably still be all right.
Yeah,
probably. No. Yeah. A leg's probably worse, but yeah. No, Cameron Murray can tackle with the best of them. He's got an offload. He's got a play before the line. I honestly think he's actually a better ball player than Isaiah Yeo. And to be honest, if he was plugged into the 13 in Penrith's fucking team, I would predict that Penrith would win the competition for 3 or 4 years from now. So, they wouldn't get beaten if he was playing 13 for Penrith.
Barney, you're dropping a couple of bombs tonight, I must say so myself.
They might still win with Yeo, then what?
Cameron Murray is he's a better defensive player than fucking Isaiah Yeo, and he is a better ball player than Isaiah Yeo. But we'll move on from there. Appy probably fucking gets us. Oh, no, he probably doesn't, because if they're going to win 3-0, he doesn't get a shot. So,
nope.
So Tarek Sims,
their halves are so much. Tarek Sims, he'll be gone after the first game, even after they win fucking 12-8 or whatever it is in the first game. Oh, jeez. What have you done to me?
Barney's hit a brick wall.
All right, Barney, go get some sleep.
I told you.
Big game tomorrow.
It's been a big day.
Yeah, you've got a big game of football tomorrow. So rest
up.
I know. Have a nice hearty breakfast. Relax during the day. Stretch beforehand, all right? It's been Footy and Frothies. Buy some of our gear at rugbyleaguemerch.com.
I'll blow out a calf. It'll be fine.
Okay. Ollie, good job as well. And we will be back Thursday night to look back on Tarek Sims's single-handed dominance of Origin 1, as well as look towards round 14 when a few of these players come back and also play for other what?
Play for other teams. Not Tarek Sims. How dare you? Tarek Sims is now a fucking worse version of Corbin Sims. But anyway.
On that note, everyone, bye.